Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andrew. As you might have guessed, I have a million projects going on at all times. Some of them are great for videos and others not so much. This project I was thinking was in the not so much category, so I didn't start filming right away, but then I got kind of midway through and I was like, okay, so this might be fun to share. So I'm gonna walk you through what I figured out so far. It's taken me a minute to sort of compile all the materials that I need and to sort of come up with a plan of action. But now that I feel that I have a plan, I can actually, share that with you instead of figuring out on the fly like I do in most of my videos. So hopefully this might be a little bit more informative. We're gonna be making I'm taking a leather jacket that I thrifted and I'm gonna be splitting open some of the seams and putting some eyelets in there and lacing it up again like a corset using some neon paracord. I feel like the corset trend has sort of exploded in the last year, and I was like, how do I translate that to menswear? I also ended up going to the Diesel store like about a month ago, and they had a jacket that was actually quite similar to this, where they had put in the eyelets and then done more of a lacing rather than a corseting. So apparently I'm on trend. I guess that's happening. Also, I feel like this project is going to be totally no-sew, which is super rare for me on this channel. So if you don't have a sewing machine, you've been looking for the right project to make happen at home, this one might be for you. So let's jump on in. For this project, I used a thrifted leather jacket, 2 packs of silver 5/32 of an inch eyelets. I used 1 full pack of 100 and just a few from the second pack. Leather glue, sewing clips or office clips, 550 paracord. I bought 100-foot lengths in several colors to try, but probably used less than half of one color. Around a 1/4 yard of additional fabric. I thought I was going to use this teal leather, but I switched to a different fabric later. You also might want some eyelets. Those are like the things that go on the end of shoelaces. It helps to give the laces a more finished look. For tools, I used a seam ripper, measuring tape, a pair of good sewing scissors, a sharp pair of scissors, or you could use an awl here if you have one, and an eyelet tool. I think it's possible to apply the eyelets without the tool, but with the number that we're installing, it was definitely worth it to have the tool. Plus, I had it on hand for my denim chaps video. So here's our jacket. Ignore that part, we've already kind of started. The first step here is to open up all the seams. For this jacket style, I opened it up at the shoulder. I've already opened up across the back here. And right now I'm gonna go in and open right down this side seam, or this sleeve seam right here on the side. I was waiting to do that until I knew this was gonna work, because that's sort of a big commitment. But let's go ahead and open that up now. So you can see when we open up the seams, we're looking right in toward the lining fabric that has some batting in the middle. So there's some options here. If you're planning to lace this and keep it really tightly closed, I think it's possible to just leave it as is with nothing in there. For me, I kind of like how this looks where it's open a little bit, and I'm planning to lace it more loosely. So that's where my leather is gonna come in. I'm putting a strip in there just to sort of create like a tongue on a shoe, so that if things open up a little bit, you can see that accent color, and it's gonna only be attached on one side so that it's still free to move as necessary. But again, if you wanna just lace things up tightly and make it more like it's gonna be just closed again and laced down, I think this would not be so necessary. So now that all my seams are open, I'm gonna go in and rip out all these threads, just get that cleaned up. Then I'm gonna go in with my glue and just glue right along, pressing that down, just creating that same fold that was already there on this side. And on this side, I am opting to fold mine so that the fold is right along this outer line of stitches, partly to use that as kind of a guideline, and also so that we don't see it. Like if we fold less than that, you're gonna see those holes all the way down. So I think it's better just to open it up, or close it up a little bit more and take the fold a little bit further out. I'm gonna be gluing just a little bit at a time and clamping it down with my clips and working my way around the jacket like that. I placed the clips very close together to apply pressure as evenly as possible. This was particularly important on the parts that weren't already creased since the leather was tougher to fold. It's funny, this glue is supposedly for leather, but it looks and behaves a whole lot like white glue. Maybe I got ripped off. Either way, the glue worked really well and was easy to wipe away if I got it in the wrong spot. In preparation for my eyelet placement, I took measurements of each of the openings to see how many eyelets I would need and how to space them. I did some research and found that standard corsets have the eyelets spaced 1 inch to 1 1/4 inches apart. I opted for 1 1/4 just because I thought it looked better and I didn't want to do any more of these than I had to. I divided each measurement by 1 1/4 and rounded down to the nearest whole number to see how many eyelets were needed. Any remainder was split evenly to determine the margin at either end. I placed the eyelets 1/4 inch from the edge right along the former seam line. To install the eyelet, I measured to find the placement, made an initial hole with my sharp-ended scissors, opened up the hole further with my sewing scissors, pressed the eyelet through, and then squeezed it in with my eyelet tool to make it permanent. These first few were deceptively easy since the seam allowance on the back didn't go all the way, so it wasn't quite as much leather to push through. Most of the jacket was much harder. One thing to note here, I started with the side here that has the seam because it's a little bit stiffer and it doesn't stretch as much, so I can get a more accurate spacing. When I came to the other side, I tried to measure the same way I did the other way, but if I stretch this out, it actually doesn't line up particularly well if I just measured. So then midway through, I started just eyeballing them. So I think the best strategy here is to measure on one side, lock those in, and then come across, pull it flat, and just eyeball so that they can get them to get them as symmetrical across as possible, because that's really what's going to matter more than the spacing, I think. Since I only had so many clips, I worked back and forth between gluing and applying eyelets so that I could keep working while the glue dried in each area. You can see here on the other side of the seam that I used the sewing scissors much more to cut little notches to open up the hole. This was definitely the most tedious and time-consuming part of this whole project. Each time I would try to push the eyelet through and it wouldn't work, so I had to cut it open more. It was just awful. If y'all have any tips or tools for making holes in leather, go ahead and put that in the comments so that anyone that tries this project can have a better time than I did. Alright, it is basically a week later. I've had a lot going on, but part of what's been going on, making millions and millions of holes in here. I think the final count was just over 100 because I used one full pack of 100 and just opened the next pack. It went pretty well for the most part. The only thing that was a little bit weird, I mentioned up here on the shoulder how sometimes you want to, in addition to measuring, you want to check to make sure that everything is lined up across. I didn't do that so well on the back here, partly because it just was so open and kind of stretched out. So I actually have one less on the bottom than I do on the top. They match up at either side, but somewhere in the middle they get off. So I'm gonna have to get a little creative with the lacing there. But other than that, it went pretty well. And we're gonna start the next step. So I thought that I was gonna use this teal leather to go on the inside, but I thought that that might be a little bit too stiff, because when I tried on the jacket, this part wanted to open up quite a bit. So I think I'm gonna put in this hot pink brocade that I found in my stock box. It's already cut into sort of a nice strip, and it's already heat sealed. You can see there on the end. So so that it doesn't fray. So the next step here is going to be to cut this into the appropriate size pieces and to heat seal the edges so it won't fray, and then to glue it to the inside of the jacket. I cut the 8-inch strip of fabric into the opening lengths that I measured earlier, adding a little extra just to make sure the ends went all the way. One for the back, although I cut 2 here for some reason, 2 for the sleeves, and 2 for the shoulders. I cut the shoulder piece in half lengthwise since they didn't need to be as wide. I wanted to keep the width for the back and the sleeves since they would move around more, and I wanted to make sure the fabric was going to fully cover the opening from all angles. To seal the edges, I carefully ran each edge of the fabric along a candle. You can see the fabric melt slightly and kind of jump away from the flame. You can also feel the stiff edge where the fabric is burned. Just a little crisp edge is enough to let you know that it's sealed. I started gluing the fabric in, starting in the center back. I opted to glue instead of sew this time because I didn't want any extra seams on the outside of the jacket. I also wanted to make this project no sew, and it was easier. This part was tough to clip in place. You could probably get away without clipping if the jacket is lying flat, but I wanted to stand it up just to give a better angle. For instance, at the shoulder, I just pushed the fabric under where I wanted it, pulled out one side to apply the glue, and then carefully placed it back under and pressed it flat. For all of the pieces, be careful to keep the area under the eyelets glue-free and set the glued part further back away from the opening. If the part directly under the eyelets is glued down, we won't be able to get the lacing in there, you know? You can see here that I got the glue in the wrong spot by accident and needed to wipe it away. Crisis averted. Alright, it's been a couple days. Life has been happening. But we're gonna finish this up today. All we gotta do is lace it up and add the little aglet things on the ends, and we'll be finished. Super excited. This one's been hanging around for a while, and we're gonna get it done. In a perfect world, my aglets would be small enough to fit through the eyelets, so I would apply them first and then they would help me lace it up. No such luck here. This is only a problem since the paracord frays like crazy, especially when being threaded through the eyelets. So I opted to burn the edge to keep it from fraying. This worked okay for the most part, although sometimes the burned edge was too stiff and large to fit through the holes. The better method that I used later was to wrap some clear packing tape around the edge and use it like a needle to sew through the eyelets. Because I'm unsure at this point of how much cord I will need, I start on one end where I want the tails to hang, pass through every other hole moving one way, and then come back the other way filling the empty holes. Once I cut my tails to the desired length, I applied my metal aglets by adding a touch of glue, pressing the cord into the opening, and then using pliers to wrap the metal around the cord and close the opening. This part was really satisfying. And now we do the sleeve. This was a struggle. If you're enjoying this project, feel free to hit the like button or subscribe for more upcycled men's fashion and decor ideas. To remedy the misaligned holes in the back, I left a lot of tails and made it into a feature. I worked from the outside in on each side, leaving tails on all 4 ends. Then I threaded one more piece through the empty center eyelet and tied it to a tail on either side to secure it and to continue that zigzag line across the back. Not too bad. Let's see it in action.